Welcome to the Generous Business Owner Podcast, where business owners gain inspiration and encouragement to live a legacy, not just leave one. And now your hosts, Jeff Thomas, Alan Barnhart, and Jeff Rutt.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's Generous Business Owner Podcast. My name is Jeff Thomas, and I've got my co-host with me, Jeff Rutt. Say hello to the people, Jeff.
Hello to the people.
Hello to the people. And we have a very special guest with us this week, Pete Chambers. You're going to love this story. Pete runs now Chambers Interests, but before that, he had a corporate career, went back to grad school, bought a company, sold a company, and is involved in helping all kinds of other people find their calling. And you'll get that whole story. But Pete, thanks for being with us today.
It's great to be with you guys. Thank you for having me.
This is going to be a bunch of fun. All right, Jeff, kick us off.
Yeah, Pete, tell us about the early years. What was it like growing up in the Chambers household? Tell us a little bit about your early years, maybe something in the junior high entrepreneurial journey that was either legal or illegal. And then what was your faith journey like in those years?
Yeah. Well, fortunately, I'm from a great couple of parents who are 85 today and still alive. And I'm the only son. I've got three sisters, two older, one younger. My mom is an East Texas woman from a Tyler Rose Queen, for you Texans that may be listening. And my dad is from had two brothers. And so all boys, she's from all girls. He's a lot German. She's a sweet little East Texas girl. And he's an entrepreneur. And she's just a sweet East Texas girl, loving Jesus every day in her life, teaching Bible study fellowship. So I grew up in a pretty textbook, conservative Texas believing family, going to a Bible church. But my dad was an entrepreneur. He's my best friend today, always has been. He was a hard charging guy. And, but I've just been blessed that he took me with him everywhere from day one. Matter of fact, he started his company in 1966, and I saw a lawyer take on a business, which is a longer story, and grow it to be the largest in his industry. But the cost on the family was not minimal. And my sweet mother made sure she let me know what a woman felt like with her husband gone and a tough CEO. And he's from all boys, and he's a principled guy, and he's an honest guy. He's full of integrity. He's my best friend, but he doesn't have a whole lot of soft words. It's straight up. And but you know where you stand with him. And so I grew up having an incredible dad that was hard on me. I'm thankful for that today, but there were some tough days on that as well. But I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas. I was an athlete. I ended up going to TCU on a golf scholarship, but lettered all 4 years in football, basketball, and golf. And if I wasn't playing sports, I was with my dad at work or fishing and playing golf and hunting. So a pretty Texas life. But most importantly, I was groomed my whole life from day one to run his company. And so business has been a part of my life since day one, and a part of our family. So it was a wonderful upbringing, but there was confusion there too.
Yeah. So Pete, tell us about any businesses, legal or illegal, during those junior high years.
No, matter of fact, I was, Dad probably put me to work and didn't pay me anything. And there were some pretty nasty jobs under conveyor belts and in the rock quarries. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm crystal clear. I've been at least, as far as I know, legal the whole time. But I've never in my early days, other than mowing yards and doing all the typical things young guys do working, I was groomed my whole life to run his business. So I just learned the rock business. We were mining limestone and calcining it. That's used in the steel industry and the construction industry. And so I grew up learning what it's like to put a hard hat on, what it's like to see a product come out of the ground, be processed and moved all the way to some of the industries that it's all around us. Lime's used in water treatment, steel, it's all around you. People just don't know. I used to say my dad was in the lime business, and they'd ask me, well, where do we grow the fruit?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You know,
Yeah.
my grandfather was German, and when he was about your dad's age now, he used to wear this T-shirt literally almost every day. I said, you can always tell an old German, but you can't tell him much. So you might have to get one of those shirts for
Yeah.
dad.
Yeah, definitely can relate to that as well, with a lot of German heritage. But Pete, how old were you when you were learning what it looked like underneath those quarry conveyors?
Oh, just, from 10 years, well, my whole life, but
Yeah.
I have pictures of
So,
me just
so
barely walking, but my whole life. But as far as working goes, probably 10 to 12 years old.
yeah,
My senior year in high school, though, I got to go live there for 3 months by myself. And that was a big,
wow,
the guys that worked in the plant were my heroes, and
yeah,
I'm so thankful that they taught me what it's like to work with my hands and to understand the operations from the ground up.
yeah. So literally the ground up. I mean, you were
Literally the
working
ground up.
in the lime business that probably no dust around with the in those conveyors, trying to fix a conveyor or figuring out how they operate from the bottom, looking at the bottom of it, and from 10 to 12 years old. That's got to be a good kind of setting the base for growing from there. That's awesome. So talk about spiritual formation, influence from
Yeah.
family, friends, school, community.
Yeah. Again, I think I've loved God my whole life. I didn't follow him my whole life. I went to Christian camps in the summer, Kanakuk camp, many of you are familiar with.
Yeah.
I spent 9 years there. I was a chief, which is, a highly
Big
thought
deal.
of role there at camp. And then I was a counselor, and I loved it. But that was part of my challenge in life, is I would go to Kanakuk and live in this bubble of love and Jesus, and I just couldn't hang on to it back home by myself. And
Mhm.
being an athlete and being in a social private school, I fell down a
Mm.
lot,
Mhm.
and went backwards and sideways, and it was tough on me.
Mhm. Yeah. So but yet some of those basics there. Kanakuk is probably one of the best.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's probably some formation and some nuggets of truth that you went back to years later. Yeah.
Yeah, the I'm third life is which they teach, is God first, others second, yourself third.
Mm.
You can't go wrong with that one. It applies to business, family, and everything I do, and I still think of it to this day.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. So out of school, out of TCU, take us to that transition.
Yeah, so college was a dip in my life. I was old enough to see the challenges in our family, and the challenges. Listen, I'm not talking on my dad. My dad is. My kids are gonna have to go to counseling for something I'm doing wrong. But I was a typical son, questioning if this is what success looks like as a Christian businessman. I'm not sure I'm in. And I was just struggling in life, and I was struggling with relationships, and been broken up with a few times by some good looking girls that broke my heart. And that just wasn't supposed to happen, because I was this sweet guy that was taught by my mom to be such a great boyfriend. But there were some great upsets there, and that was just how one of the things that really hurt me in life. And
Hmm.
so college got me down. I end up graduating college. I end up going to work for the family business, but my dad, being a hard charger, he was like, you're going to go to work for us, but you're going to work as far away from me as possible. And I look back on that and I respect that. So I moved to Europe and worked for the company over there. Worked for a year in France and Belgium, and I'm in my 20s, and that's a pretty lonely thing. Where our plants are, which again were a partner that had invested in us, that were in the same business. Lime plants are not in fun places. So people are like, "Oh, you lived in Europe? Did you wear a scarf?" No, I was in
Yeah,
northern
around my
France and
mouth, right?
southern Belgium and
Dust up.
Germany and Czech, and smoking Marlboros with the guy in the plant. So it was
Right.
it was it was another, an unbelievable experience, but a tough one. Just because, again, I was forming, but I ended up moving to California next, again, farthest away from my dad as possible, was in sales. And, but, you know, it was a good time for me to become the man that I think I am today.
Wow.
And now, how did you decide when? Now you went back to graduate school, right? How did all that decision play out? Because I'm
Yeah.
picturing this guy is getting groomed for the family business, and then
Yeah. So 2 years
uh,
go by, and the Europeans had a requirement, which we owned our company, and by the time I was graduating, or actually after those 2 years, we were rolling up the industry, but on their dollars. So we were being diluted. So I was looking at more of I would say, a reporting role as chairman or CEO of the Americas, and they had a requirement that you had to have an MBA. So I enrolled at the University of Texas in Austin. Somehow, some way, I got in, and I spent a year there, and I'd never studied our business financially. I, of course, knew it from the ground up, but I never understood it financially. And to be honest with you, I knew the Europeans better than my dad at this point. And so as they were gaining control, I called my dad, and this is a crazy story. I called my dad at the end of the first year of business school, and I said, have you ever thought about selling the business? All of our eggs are in one basket, and this is moving towards a bureaucracy, and rightly so. It's a large global business. And he said, that's a great idea. And he grabbed my mom. They drove to Austin, Texas, and we sat there with my new wife. By the way, I'd gotten married in the last 6 months to a year. I can't remember now exactly, but we sat in my apartment in Austin, and we decided to sell the business. And I dropped out of graduate school, moved home. We sold the business in a year and a half, and I thought I'd go back to get my MBA, but I would been in the real world enough that what I got year one was good enough. And we sold the business. And in 1996, my wife looked at me and said, great job. You just sold our job. And now we have no job. And my dad was not the sharing type at the time, at least that I knew of. So we were in Fort Worth, Texas, and we were pregnant and no job.
wow. Okay, so you help him sell it. What I'm not hearing is, well, I had a 10% ownership, and I thought, that $2 million might set us off in a good spot. So you didn't really. There was really no discussion, it sounds like,
No,
about
so
what
he
your
said,
interest was in the business.
so we had a good friend named Richard Rainwater, and we heard this term family office. So the proceeds, the origination of this office, Jeff, was my dad's capital from Chemical Lime Company, now known as Lhoist, LHOIST. And I went with him. I found the office space. My sister decorated it. We formed the office, and within about 2 months, my dad came in my office and said, managing money and being successful is this is no fun. Go do what I raised you to do. Go find a business. And I'm 27 years old, and I said, okay, and started looking for a business. And he signed on the note. I put every dollar I had in my savings account, which was about 100,000 for my grandfather's life insurance policy, and bought a 100-year-old jewelry manufacturer here in Fort Worth, Texas, called Diamond H Recognition. And they were making jewelry for corporate rewards. So lapel pins, tenure-based products, safety award programs, sales award rings. It's like the old Jostens and O.C. Tanner type that you've all seen, the Gold Watch Company. This was a small business, and it had been around for 100 years in Fort Worth, Texas, which I'm a Fort Worth guy. And I said, well, I don't know anything about jewelry, but I do know how to thank people for doing a good job, because that's what my dad taught me to do. So I bought the business, and 20 years later sold a software company. So there's a lot of stories in between that, but it's the same company.
Okay. Now I'm trying to set the scene here. Maybe you're young enough that this is no big deal. But I'm sort of picturing the mind shift between, hey, my dad sold the office. Maybe we didn't talk about all the money stuff back in the day, but I got a job working at the family office. Seems kind of cushy, to be honest with you, at least from the outside. And then dad strolls in and is like, no, it's too cushy. Go find something. Like, were you so young that it's like that pain has passed, or did that freak you out? I guess that's my question.
Well, I think fortunately, I had some education to understand, the economics of the
Right,
deal.
right,
So I
right.
probably knew our family was not broke, but I was also being influenced by other men downtown that were a little older than me that had the family cushy deal, and they seemed to be miserable in life.
Oh, see,
Hmm.
that's interesting.
And I started forming a concern that looking successful because of your dad did
Hmm.
not lead to happiness.
Hmm.
And my dad very much knew that for me. And I would say he pushed me out.
Hmm.
I think he pushed me out knowing it was the best thing for me. It was confusing and hard, but it was not cushy being in this office. I don't even know if I was getting paid, but I knew that my mom and my dad did not see the same as far as compensation for me. They
Hmm.
both, I'm the only son. They both wanted me to run the family office, but there was equality issues with my sisters. And so I started from that day point on, and both you, Jess, will understand this, but I started studying wealth management and the impact on family and the impact on joy during those times, which is when, again, I met Bob Buford in my 20s, is when he was the most influential in my life.
Hmm.
Okay,
Say
so
more about that. Yeah.
yeah, there you go. Because that's a big string in your life, I know for sure, that continues today. So maybe talk a little about that. And of course, Bob's down the street from you at that time. I think he was in Dallas, you were Fort Worth, or
Yeah,
was he in Fort Worth?
he was in Dallas.
He was in Dallas, yeah.
So, this is what I have fun talking to older men. I end up talking to a lot of older men today because I really am more their son than I am their peer. And I talk to a lot of men today because there's so much success out there today, but how do you raise a son? How do you treat wealth and still keep your kids' feet on the ground? Well, I just have my one story, but my dad, I think, worked really hard to keep my feet on the ground, which didn't feel very good because it felt like a bit of a crunch, and oppression. And I think there were some times where he overdid it, but that's okay. I got through it, and I'm a better man today. But at that time, I knew I was going to be an entrepreneur, and I knew what I didn't want to happen inside of my house. And so I needed wisdom and help, and that's where Bob Buford came in. I said, "How do you win with God? How do you win in a marketplace when everybody wants to cut your throat? And how do you win with your wife? And how do you win with your children? And how do you stay somewhat healthy and happy and with friends? And how do you organize all this? Or is it possible? I mean, is it possible to be a great Christian, loving husband and do really well in the marketplace? And I really didn't know the answer to that, but I can stand here today and say you can do it.
Hmm.
Oh man. So wow, what a topic. So it's tempting to stay on the string. So maybe you can kind of take us through maybe two strings. Maybe let's shift back to the business for a second. So you buy this business. Give us maybe take us through the business story a little bit, and then we
Yeah.
can come back, or you can weave in the halftime story along the way.
So oddly enough, if you look back in '97, the internet was really just coming along, and so I bought a 100-year-old jewelry manufacturer, and we were shipping one shipment of 20 lapel pins for 5 years, 100 for 10 years, blah blah blah. It was a very simple business, except for the jewelry manufacturing component. But the world was changing, the internet was coming on, and younger people were saying, "I don't wear a coat and tie anymore. I don't need jewelry." So what did people want? They wanted a choice. And so as I walked around, which we had, some sizable companies that were customers, they wanted choice. Well, that was a totally different program. That was a totally different logistics and supply chain business. But my graphic artist and I started writing a software program in 1998 that ended up being an enterprise employee engagement platform that companies like Southwest Airlines and American Airlines, to name a couple, Chevron, oil and gas companies, were using. We were helping people think they're people. We were
Hmm.
helping companies think they're people, and it started with a piece of jewelry, but it ended up with software and an Amazon type backend and a points based application like you see on your American Express backend, if you will.
Yeah. So
Wow.
okay, so Southwest would say, congratulations, you made it 5 years. Click on this link. You got 200 points to select from that whole thing. That's a big
Yeah,
pivot.
it started out with that, but then it became, as you guys heard about, the peer-to-peer movement, and how do we move recognition and reward? How do we find someone on the spot? How do we thank them on the spot? And what kind of tool can we have to do that? And so while we started with tenure, it became an enterprise platform that managers and everyone had on their phone, and it was a currency inside of companies. And our company was called Inspire Us, which, some people were smart enough to understand that, but inspire us.
Yeah.
But, and our tagline was to bring joy to work, one experience at a time.
Mm.
And so our job and our joy was to help managers find ways and to see people doing good things and have a tool that could meaningfully impact them in that moment and reward them. They could then accumulate those rewards and buy whatever they want. That's basically the concept.
All right. So, but I'm still back to this. You buy this business.
Yeah.
Dad's been successful. Frankly, that puts a lot of pressure on you and every other kid who's had a successful dad. Okay. You don't want to be the guy who buys the business and then it fails, which lots do, let's be honest. Okay. So talk about that pressure and maybe a setback along the way. I know it kind of worked out well, and we'll get to that, but
that's great.
What was that pressure like? What I'm sure that was a scary transition. Where was the main pain there?
That pressure never leaves. Let me just start with that.
Wow.
It never leaves.
Wow.
There's no reason for it to be here, but it never leaves. The impression, the desire we all have to honor our fathers and to make them proud. I don't know if it's left you, but it's never left me. And that was the biggest thing hanging over my head, to walk around town, everybody say you're Tom's son, and you're never Pete. And so to be honest with you, this company that I ran was as much about that, proving that it was Pete and that I was a man as anything else. And I don't know if that's healthy. It probably isn't, but that's the truth. And there were times when my dad would come to me and say, stop. You don't have to prove to me anymore. You are successful.
Interesting.
So if you haven't told your son that yet, find a reason to tell him, because he's fighting for those words. And that's the beauty of the good Lord. The Lord's given us that and given him that in his son, Jesus, and that the victory is there and it's made. And that's one of the things I held on to in these times. But I want to go back to Bob Buford. Yeah. Bob Buford was helping all these men that were at the end of that, and they had already become successful. They were Pete. They were successful. They were the high profile guy, but they had all these casualties. And so if 100 was success, put it at 100 million or just 100 on the test, they blew out, many of them blew out their families, blew out their marriages, and they ended up with 50.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Your wife, you hear the story. The guy comes home, honey, we did it. I haven't seen you in 20 years, but now we're going to go enjoy each other. And she says, thank you very much. Here are your papers. And he ends up with 50, and he's got a broken family. He's lonely, and he's rich, and he has regrets. And I got to see that when I'm in my 20s. And I said, well, who am I to be a fool, Lord? If I see that, then how do I not let that happen to me? And so I just said, Lord, I'm asking for 100, but I'll take 50 if I'm honoring and pleasing to you. And my wife loves me, because that's what Bob taught me. Picture yourself in your coffin. Whose hand are you holding? Or what is she saying to you in your coffin? What are your kids saying? What are your friends saying and those around you? And at the end of the day, your success matters, but not that much at that moment. But we do have a job to do. You can't go to work and try to win third, or you'll get swallowed. I don't know about you guys, but competitors are tough. But I said, Lord, I'm going to do my best to please you from an integrity standpoint, from the way I serve my employees. And I want to do it your way. And I'm okay with 50. I thought I'd get 20 because I figured he'd joke me, because there were some, I don't have the highest self-esteem. I didn't talk about this, but school was tough on me. And I feel like, the dumbest guy in the class, because oftentimes I was. And I just figured I'd get 50. I thought I might get 20 because I'd joke me, but he gave me 100. And it's just, I said, well, I'm going to spend the rest of my life telling people what Bob told me. And all the young guys that feel like they have to go make it before they can be sweet, and before they can be generous, and before they can be the man God wants them to be, they have to win in the marketplace. I just say it's a bad strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay.
That's
So
good stuff.
everybody's thinking the same thing right now. And we always ask for this practical tip at the end, and we'll do that. That's coming. We'll wrap. But you got to give some principles. What are the things that Bob taught you and that organization that were kind of aha moments, even early for you on that journey?
The aha moments are, there's no easy road, but the intentionality is the only way to make it work. And that's where Lloyd Reeb came into my life. And, you've got to first define what your purpose is in life. I mean, all of our purpose is to honor and to love the Lord and to love others and to serve others. But you've got to decide what's important. Is your wife really that important? Well, then where is she on your calendar, so to speak?
Yeah.
Where are your children on your calendar? And what are you willing to sacrifice? I said, Lord, I'm going to, if 50 is where I can make soccer games and take my wife out on dates, my competitors, you got to make up this difference here.
Yeah.
This between 50 and 100. And the principle is this: I don't believe in life balance. I was in the HR business for 20 years, and I walked through everything you can imagine on how to engage and inspire employees. And life balance is not the intentionality, and integration is the key. What are you for? And how are you working towards that? And the only way that you can get good at saying no is to know what you're saying yes to. And get real clear with what you're saying yes to, because if you are a bit successful, the inquiries get only stronger and more enticing to your life, and you can fill your life with a bunch of good stuff and be mediocre. But you have to, if you know who you are and where you're going and who you're serving and what you're trying to accomplish, then you'll stay focused, and you'll wake up every day with an agenda towards the long goal and the short goal.
It's so fascinating. This is so good. What's fascinating to me about what you just said is, I was tempted to say, I'll say it anyway, in your case, God, I'll use the word, redeemed the other 50. Okay. If you wanted to go 100% at business, okay, which by the way, I'm tempted to do.
Yep.
And you do this exercise and intentionality, you're going to carve out stuff. You're like, but I know that's not the right priorities. If I sort of pray and ask God for what the ranking of my life really should look like, back to maybe Kanakuk, business wasn't on the list, and you reorder it, and then you do your schedule, and you're like, okay, sometimes, shall we say, God will redeem the other 50 and still give you 100. Okay. Sometimes maybe you get the win at 50. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe your business doesn't flourish the way it would if you put in all that time. Did you lose?
No.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I think there's this temptation.
You've got to, as it says in Proverbs, you ready the horses, but the victory is his. And I just said, Lord, I'm going to do and I wasn't perfect, guys, of course.
No. But
I'm going to do my best to follow your word and to follow your work ethic in Proverbs and to follow the wisdom of men that have talked into my life, and the results are yours. Yeah. I'm praying that I please you, but I want to be successful in business, maybe because of this father issue, maybe whatever. But, I just knew that I love business. I mean, I've been in business my whole life. I love it. Yeah. And you can't go in to lose, and you go in to win, but you can't do it at the sacrifice of the things that are most important. and
Yeah.
that's your family, and that's your character, and that's what you're doing for the kingdom.
I love what you said about intentionality and the intentionality and integration, knowing what you can say yes to starts with what you need to say no to. And yeah, I think of John Wooden's quote John Wooden, one of the greatest basketball players, UCLA,
Coach, yeah.
talks about not focusing on the score, focusing on the details of practice. He used to sit in the stands during the games because of so much focus on the intentionality and focusing on the basics. But yeah, sometimes letting that go, knowing that we are intentional and focused on the right things.
Well, I think, Jeff, it's defining what victory is.
Yeah.
So John Wooden would have, I think the John Wooden analogy is apt. It's like winning is following the fundamentals.
Right.
Okay. And I think that's the same thing you're saying, P. It's like follow the fundamentals. If you say winning the game looks like this, not 100% business, which is where my mind goes to first too, full confession, that's my bent, is to put too much emphasis on business and not enough on those other things. That's not victory. So defining what victory is and then setting your calendar and your priorities for that. So what if you don't have the same level? Like God may choose in certain cases to give you that full financial victory from business that you want, but he may not, but you still win by being intentional about the other things in your life that are more important anyway, right? I mean, that's the old joke, right? Like you're talking about the epitaph is kind of what you were talking about with Bob Buford, right? I mean, like, who cares what money you have? You can't take it with you anyway.
Yeah.
So
I do think, and Joe, you guys know this, and at the same time, I think God is looking for stewards that he can pour into. And why he poured it into Forrest Gump here, I don't know, but I do know that he's looking, and he knows how to. It's his economy, and he's going to get it to work. And that's why too, the windfall, while it was awesome and celebrated and all those things, it's his money, and now I'm a steward of that, and that's equally as quote unquote pressureful. I don't know if that's the right word. It's filled with pressure as well, in a good sense, but I want to be a good steward of it and do the right thing with it. So it's a pretty cool relationship.
You certainly are hungry, humble, and smart. That humility is coming through, Pete. Talk a little bit about, as we round the corner here, a little bit about how you are pouring into others' lives and what you see, 5 years from now, or what's the next 25 look like for you? What cranks your tractor?
Yeah. Well, first of all, let's see. You asked me two questions. I'm sorry, that just blew out my mind.
It's the same thing. It's basically, okay, how do you pour into others now?
Yeah. So pouring into others. Well, I'm doing my first hands-on giving. Ironically, you heard my story about the last kid in the classroom and the last guy you want in a classroom. I am the chairman of a private elementary school, pre-K 3-year-old through 5th grade in our poorest, challenged African-American community in Fort Worth, which happens to be 4 miles from my house. My wife got me this gig, so look out. But she helped find this school. It was a typical startup. A wonderful guy, has more faith than I'll ever have. We have 100 kids. And I'm the chairman of that school, and it's unbelievable. We're building a $15 million building. I was telling Jeff about earlier, and for some reason, somehow I get to apply the same exact skill set and experience level with the companies that I still are involved with that school. I serve the head of school, and it's an honor to do that. So that's how I'm doing it ground level in my city. On a broader spectrum, I partner with Lloyd Reeb, again, with Bob and Lloyd being so influential in my life. For some reason, even though I'm 56, Lloyd and I work with guys oftentimes older than me, but some in my age group, working through the halftime transition.
Mhm.
And, I've been in YPO for 28 years now. I've been in forum experience for 28 years. You count the hours up, it's crazy what I've spent in listening to leaders open up their heart and soul with the complex life that they live. And for some reason, that along with being around my dad my whole life, I have this gift, I guess, which I'm going to let Lloyd tell you about that. But apparently, I do well in sitting and leading guys through success to significance. And so Lloyd and I take anywhere from 6 to 12 men a year through the halftime content and transitioning experience, and position them, put a roadmap, a life plan together for them to finish well the next 30 years of their life. And so I will be spending the rest of my life doing that. But in partnership with that, I spend a lot of time with 30 to 45-year-old CEOs, giving them the same memo that Bob gave me. And it's just a real joy. This generation, which Jeff, your son's group in it, they're wisdom seekers, they're networkers, they're very successful. They're dealing with more money than I ever dealt with at that age. And man, for some reason, what I'm telling you today hits home with them. It's, they're looking for a real story. They're winners. They want to do well in business. They are stretching the lines at home. They're stretching the lines in business to stay up with the Joneses. And I love talking to them about it.
I can tell that you're passionate about that, Pete. If someone listening today wants to learn more about that success to significance, or connect with you or Lloyd Reeb, how do they find out more information? And we can
the best way is to contact the Dallas office for halftime. Just a little more specifics about the group that I lead. We lead a group of men. So I think I told Jeff, I'm hunting camels. It's harder for a camel to enter the gates of heaven than a camel through the eye of a needle. Did I say that right? I'm talking.
You know what you meant, yeah.
But so we work with guys with $50 million in net worth and above that want to give $1 million a year away. And we're trying. I'm for some reason I just deal well with guys that have all the choices in the world, and if they were to choose a path and following God and being generous with his capital, that's who we want to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
We'll put links to halftime in the show notes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love some of the theme that you and Lloyd and others in the 100X groups have talked about. The West has, as a lot of our businesses have become successful and individuals have become successful, there's been more focus on comfort, which leads to complexity, which leads to complacency. And it's a slippery slope. And I know you're passionate about figuring out ways to really intentionally think through that and think, forward, think, what does this look like 5, 10, 30 years from now?
That's right.
Yeah.
So as we
Thank you
wrap
for
up,
what you do.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, Pete, thank you for the way you're intentionally influencing men and their decisions that are going to impact their situations for years to come. And hopefully some of our listeners will, tap in to that and just absorb some of that wisdom that you've been sharing. It's awesome.
So to wrap it up, Pete, like we said, we always try to leave just one practical tip for somebody, probably that 30 to 45-year-old behind you on the journey. It could be ahead of you, but so maybe somebody just in that, trying to get that balance right, and or intentionality and integration right, I should say. What's just something they can do tomorrow that's a step in the right direction?
I've been doing it since I was 13 years old because my mom suggested it. But there's 31 Proverbs in the book of Proverbs, 31 chapters. If you struggle reading the Bible, you don't know where to start, read one chapter of Proverbs. Whatever the date is, you just go to that date. And you may feel like you're reading Chinese, but I've been reading them my whole life, and they're fresh every day. And so I'm not saying I read them every day. I'm not a religious guy here, guys. But if you want to have insight and wisdom, it's right there in the book of Proverbs. And number 2 is, wherever you are, I don't care if you are older than me and you're 65 or 75, it is never too late to stop, to go to the ones that are closest to you that you've hurt and tell them you love them and that you recognize it and that you want to do better.
Woo.
And I come from all girls. I don't know how to raise a son, but I had a pretty good dad. I had a real good dad. So I might have something to say, because boys have feelings too. But your daughters are always available for that conversation. If you feel like there's a gap there, they will choose better men, or they will relate better to the men in their lives if they have that peace and that love and that affirmation from their father. It's never too late. I don't care how tough a guy you are and how you can continue to escape it, but just stop and go make peace, man. It'll change your life.
Wow.
Mic drop.
Mic drop.
Mic drop. Just rewind that one 15 seconds on your phone, folks, and listen to that one again. I'm going to. So, hey, listen, can't thank you enough, Pete, for being with us this week. That was just really a lot of great nuggets there that a lot of people are going to benefit from. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pete.
Thanks, Jeff. And thanks, everybody, for listening to this week's Generous Business Owner Podcast. Subscribe on YouTube. Hit us up on our website. And share it with a friend. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Generous Business Owner Podcast with Jeff Thomas, Alan Barnhart, and Jeff Rutt. Make sure to follow the podcast so you don't miss an episode. You can find the guest contact information in the show notes. Stay tuned for the next episode.